Welcome, welcome very, very much to Conversations. Pleasure to welcome to the program two people that are going to be able to talk about a monumental figure in the history of what we call public access television, and that is the person of Sidney W. Dean, Jr., who might very rightfully be called the founding father, among others at that time, of public access television. And we have two people who were closely associated with him. He passed on, sad to say, at the age of 92, I think, 91 in 1997. But he was a monumentally important figure in terms of communication. And we have his wife, who his long-term wife was with us, Eugenia, and on my far left, Peter Stanford, and they were very close friends. And ladies, gentlemen, welcome very, very much to Conversation. Peter, I wonder, maybe you could just talk a little bit, share just a little bit in a very brief way your own background. I know you're involved with SeaWorld, a magazine. You're an editor and chief of that, or editor.
Editor at large. Editor at large is a wonderful title.
It is indeed.
Means you can go and raise hell anywhere.
Yeah.
And I used to be editor, but this is a much better title, and I've been involved with history and particularly with history at sea, ever since I can remember. It's just been a passion of mine. And my wife and I were the founders of the South Street Seaport Museum in Lower Manhattan. And then we left there on a difference of opinion about how it should be done. But not until we brought in the ships and got on the land.
Yes,
and all that.
Right.
And then we ran the National Maritime Historical Society, and then I retired from that in 2001 after 30 years as president, and so now I'm retired, and that is really an exhausting job. I want to tell you.
And you were a very long and very close, perhaps the closest, or maybe a friend of Sidney W. Dean, Jr.
Yeah,
and that's primarily why you're here now, to talk about that. We
Absolutely.
can do another program about the sea.
Great.
It's 7/10 of the world's surface, I think. It's an important part of it. But right now we're going to try and celebrate Sidney Dean. And welcome very much, and we'll be going into this conversation. My immediate left is Eugenia Dean. Eugenia Dean was the wife of Sidney Dean. And she's very dedicated to the memory of him. They were obviously such a very close couple. It's so obvious. And Eugenia, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you, Harold. Sidney was, when my friends asked what this man was like when I first met Sidney, I just was an intellectual Zorba.
Intellectual Zorba.
Yeah.
Okay.
A true intellectual with a passion for life, for everything, for music, for dance, for song, with an insatiable curiosity. Being with Sidney was like being with a crowd.
Really?
I missed the crowd.
Yes, I know.
He had a great deal of compassion, and he treated everybody with dignity and respect and compassion. And he was an endlessly fascinating man, endlessly fascinating. He had so many multiple facets to his nature, and it's hard to believe that a man of such brilliance could be so sweet and tender and gentle natured.
Well, we're going to talk. Yeah, we're going to talk about him because as we indicated, he was in a very real sense, the founding father of this entity where we are now, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and the 3,000 public access facilities around this country that is now expanding to the world, because he had a vision of what was to come, and that was all very, very significant. We're going to celebrate his memory and his vision to the degree it's possible for us to do. But at the very outset, I said at one point, I think we ought to commission first thing an over life-size bronze statue of the man and put it right in front of every facility to bring attention to him. And I think you'd have no objection to that.
Well, he was very modest. I think he would have.
He might have had objections, but he was above all else a gentleman as well. He was a true class act, as my daddy might have said. But maybe you could share with you, because we've met with you with some people from producers, Paul and Laurie and Joe Friendly, Joshua Walensky. We met and had a wonderful day with you and your friend Lois Canuff. And you recounted when you first met You live at Washington Square North.
Yes.
You were there, and maybe you could share your background up to that point that the day that you met Sidney W. Dean Jr.
We lived in the same building simultaneously for 3 years, Harold.
Without knowing
each other. We never bumped into each other.
Yeah, right.
And there were only 28 apartments.
Okay.
That would be your typical New York. But we didn't work from 9 to 5. So we just didn't have the occasion to. And when I think I made the first move because when we did run into each other, I just thought I really wanted to know that man.
Oh, really?
But he simultaneously asked our superintendent about me.
I see.
I was an interior decorator then, and he told the superintendent that he would like to do some decorating. And I thought he was a stockbroker, and I said I had some money to invest, and I called him, and he said I don't do that. He had become. And at age 55, took an early retirement after advertising, decided to become an entrepreneur, but he spent only, I think, 5% of his time and his 2 secretaries following his investments because he spent 95% of his time with his passion of communication of First Amendment issues and free speech. And I mean it really literally 98% of his time. And 2 secretaries.
Yes, to keep track. And he's got many filing cabinets well,
he has
indexed?
1,100 well-indexed, 1,100 files. File folders, some are 2 inches thick. And it's endless. And we never took a trip. I mean, we had the good fortune to be in Hawaii and Mexico and other countries without him taking about at least 25 of his babies along. The files were his babies.
You mean the yellow pad? The legal pad? Was it yellow legal rule?
Folders.
And file folders. Lots of file folders. And number 2 pencils.
And number 2 pencils and file folders, many, at least 25 minimum on communication. And he always set up a desk wherever we went. In Greece, he just set up a tin table by the sea. That was his desk and his chair, because he always worked. He had a prodigious and endless productive mind that just never stopped.
Yeah, that was the Zorro.
That was the Zorba. The Zorba was his passion for life. It was his great passion for everything, for music, for food, for dance. At his 90th birthday, he danced a belly dance.
Good for him.
He was a remarkable...
And he had a wide circle of friends, and he had been maybe you could share a little of where he was born. He was born in 1905?
He was born in 1905.
Okay, and then he was...
Brookline, Massachusetts. And
Yale.
New York. He was a Yale graduate in 1925. And actually, he majored in chemistry, musicology,
literature.
He really wanted to be a librarian, and he referred to himself later on as a self-made extrovert when he was in advertising, because he had to, at age 25, he was the vice president in charge of marketing for the largest advertising company in the world. And
not a small matter.
Not a small matter, and he really want. He said, well, he never lost a day's work, but it was he preferred to have been a librarian.
It was interesting to be a librarian. I have great respect for library science, because they put a grid on reality, and if you're interested in everything, he seemed to have a wide range of interests. A librarian isn't a bad discipline to be familiar with, knowing where all the various things are tucked away, as it were, in terms of the human understandings.
And he had an insatiable curiosity about everything and anything. And he was like a walking encyclopedia, Harold. I dare not, if I had an early morning appointment, ask him a question of why is the sky dark over there and not over there, because that was good for a 20-minute
long
lecture.
dissertation.
That's right. And
that's really interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, you recall one day that you were wearing a strawberry-colored dress and a straw hat that you remembered well the day that you met, right? Because you're an interior decorator.
Yes, and I was wearing my decorator's uniform.
Yes, okay.
I know it was summer because it was a hot pink linen dress with a matching straw hat.
And you got that in your mind, right?
Well, but because Sidney said later on that he was totally intimidated by my presence just when we bumped into each other in the hall of our building.
Sort of had been mutually worked out, it would seem, in terms of the way these things occur.
Within 2 days.
And then I think you told us also that he was living in one unit in that apartment, in that unit, and you were living in another, and you came there to have a cup of coffee or something like that, and it was like an army barracks.
Well, it was
He did, and you were an interior decorator, so there was some work to be done here.
Exactly. Regularly with a lot of stainless steel and khaki. And it was really a bachelor's pad. And 3 of them was a very large apartment.
Yeah, they are.
Into offices, full of staff. I think he did have 2 secretaries and people working for his, as I said, and spending 95% of his time on his own. Civil libertarian.
He was media director for the American Civil Liberties Union, I believe. No.
Yes, he was the director. I have a few prompting notes here, if I may.
Oh, sure, by all means, dear. We want the world to become aware of him, and because we owe him a great debt, and we want us all to be familiar with that. And we do have a little clip of a program that he did with Mr. Trove, Jacob Trove, that we'll show so they can see the man. We'll be running that soon. Yeah.
Wait
a minute, Peter's got.
When he became when he became a member of the Radio and TV Committee of the ACLU.
Oh, thank you.
In '63, within 2 years, he changed it to Media and Communications, a much more expansive thought going to ownership, use, purpose, that whole stuff, rather than the machines.
And a fervent defender of the First Amendment.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that was going back to his family setting, too. I think he had that. His father was a newspaper editor, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so, but he really believed in the First Amendment with a great ferocity.
Yes, he did, and in a way that not all of us do.
Yes.
He was a damn good listener.
Okay.
And that was really something you would learn things from people that you'd known all your life, and they'd be telling you things that you'd never heard because Sidney listened. He asked thoughtful questions.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody talks about his talking.
Yeah.
His talking was forceful and colorful, and he never repeated
great good humor.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, gosh. He had a gusto for life, as Eugenia says. Zorba is perfect for
right.
Terrific guy. But that delight, really, in finding out what other people had to bring forth. It's a very human and humane, encompassing version of free speech where you really mean it. You
really mean it. Really dedicated to what you believe in, and a gentleman.
And this capacity for, and this real desire to find out what the other guy's thinking.
And I heard her say that he, with all of his accomplishments, which were legion, he was in many things, he was also humble.
Extremely humble. He was...
many good virtues all rolled up into one, I guess you would say.
And he wanted... he was very much, I would say, a clone of his grandfather. I realized that when I read his grandfather was a congressman between 1856 and 1859. And he was an avid abolitionist. And I read Sidney had left on his desk sort of a personal file, which I never looked at or read, and a speech of his grandfather that he made during the Civil War. And it was like reading Sidney, because there was this energy and the strength and the indignation about it. And he also had read a newspaper article about his grandfather, of the same sweet nature. It's an unusual combination. He truly was his clone. I realized after the fact.
And you had a wide circle of friends. You were saying in that apartment that Margaret Mead was there one night?
Yes, sir. Yes, that was a funny situation. Yeah, she came and spoke once, and Sidney had including his passion, included everything, including making very heavy drinks.
Uh-huh.
And he served a drink. I mean, he just didn't do thimblefuls. He just did it in a big way. And I think he gave her a little more than she could really wanted. It was sort of a funny situation.
And Ellie Noem, right?
Ellie
and
Noem,
Nadine Strassen, who was a...
and unfortunately, it's amazing that Nadine and the city never met. I think they would...
Nadine didn't meet them.
No,
Ellie
it's
did.
Really amazing. But Ellie, yes, of course, because Ellie, and that's something I really want to focus on. Ellie, Sydney attended all of Ellie Noem's symposiums.
I did too. We probably saw each other.
Really?
Oh yeah, I used to
we
go
always
there.
sat
They
in
were
the
very
front
good.
row writing notes, and and perhaps this would maybe the time I could mention to the website is that Ellie Noem is the director of Columbia Institute for Telecommunications.
Right. Yeah,
and they invited in 1998, which was too soon for me to deal with. Somebody came representative from I think sent by Ellie Noem. Saying they'd like to memorialize Sydney with a website.
Yes, right.
Hosted by Columbia University,
right.
Telecommunications. And the young man came and he said, what a wonderful, he said he made history in New York, and I think this work should be on the internet. His work should be on the internet. And he said, what a wonderful second life that would be for Sydney.
Yeah, right,
and that's what prompted me to do it at all, because it was very painful to think of going through his files and looking at his annotations and everything.
Yeah, you were so close, and you miss him so much. I know, it's so obvious that you do. And you're so dedicated to letting people know about him.
Really, that's so important. I think this website is remarkable.
Yeah, and again, it is. I'm not sure the URL, but we'll put it up at the end of the program. Okay, you want to show something here?
Yes, a wonderful
Sure, absolutely.
story,
all right.
I think about this, that when they first started to work on this website, I was very, it was distressing for me. And the first day I went to Sidney's desk to look through his files, and I lost this last night. A small piece of, I moved something on his desk, and a small piece of paper fluttered to the back of his desk, behind the wall, behind the desk, fluttered to the floor. I don't even know how that happened. Something propelled me to get on my hands and knees, to crawl under the desk and pick up this piece of paper.
Yeah.
And it turned out, I don't have it with me, I lost it last night. It was a check written in 1993, and to the telecommunications, to the Columbia Telecommunications, and the Biomed for some symposium. Again, it was a check written out to attend that symposium in 1993. And it was like a miracle, and it was like Sydney telling me, go for it. It was the very first day that I was ready for his class. Magical. I think it just really...
Would you have attended Ellie's seminars or anything?
I attended it.
You would have been, so you were keeping your ear tuned to the ground, as it were, about these communications issues.
I didn't understand.
Not the way he did, but
not
you were.
At all.
It wasn't as though you weren't interested at all.
I used to watch his debates. Yes, I will. Well, of course I was interested, but I didn't understand. I only understood what Sydney felt that the cable television had an infinite, the coaxial cable had an infinite capacity, that one could. I understood that for the first time when he lectured at Princeton. I attended the lecture, and he brought an old-fashioned telephone with him, a dial phone, and he showed everybody this cord, telephone cord, and he said the coaxial cable is the diameter of this cord, which has an infinite capacity, and one could do their banking, to their shopping, to their read books.
He was looking ahead to what's emerging now. And don't you think he would be so pleased with the developments that is coming with the internet and everything? And we were just saying it took 3 months to get a letter from Southampton to New York, and Tom Jefferson's time, now it's an instantaneous. This program will be up on YouTube within about a day of our taping it here, and it'll be able to be seen everywhere in the world. And this program, when it airs, will be streamed and will be able to be seen everywhere in the world as it's being streamed, almost in television quality and dependably. And that's really something, a whole lot of shaking going on, as little Richard used to say, in terms of the communication and so forth. And so, yeah, you had a couple of quotes. You were trying to find something here.
Yes, I did. I wanted very much to read something that was Sydney. I probably lost it already.
Been known to happen. It happens to me with alarming regularity. But
by the way, you know, he did, Harold. He was involved since 1953.
Yeah.
He was the ACLU chairman. I think Peters, you just said that, didn't you? And then in 1977, he was asked to become a member of the board of directors of ComStat in Washington, D.C. The White House.
ComStat, yeah, sure.
And he was also, in 1968, asked to join the president's task force on communications in Washington.
Would that have been with Henry Geller? Henry Geller? Or that was the Office of Telecommunications Policy? Henry Geller? You don't remember Henry Geller?
I'd have to look in the files. But
right,
I know that he was, and we
No.
talked about it. He said, how would you like to feel to live in Washington? And he declined because he had too many...
irons in the fire in New York?
Too many commitments, he was with the City Club of New York.
He was very prominently with the City Club of New York.
And all of these associations were very important to him, so he declined.
I think also he declined because he felt there was a battle being waged in New York.
Yeah.
And he was trying to hold the future open so that there would be public access. I think that really he just didn't want
to abandon that.
be in Washington when losing the war in New York.
Right,
really,
right.
and that's what
very
he felt
well
like.
taken, Peter. Very well, because what was being shaping was being done here very largely. Mr. Irving Kahn, a teleprompter, and all those people, and it was just emerging so much. And I wonder, maybe this would be a time.
I have a good story about it.
Okay, no, I'm just saying maybe this would be a time we could do it. We've been talking about this person, and there is some videotape of Sidney, and we've got a little clip that was with Jacob Traub, had that very interesting program on Channel 25, and Sidney was a guest, and WNYC, I guess it was E, and he was on there, and it was an interesting program. It's taken over by an Allworth now, but maybe we could show that tape now. It runs about 5 minutes, and it's him talking some about what he was saying. I think it goes back to 85 or 86.
No, it was
92. It was 92. So he's been carrying these ideas since probably many decades as he's talking to Mr. Traub. But it will give the people a chance to take a look at the cut of his jib, as they might say in Sea Talk. But maybe we could set that.
Your committee, the ACLU committee, and you personally see this electronic revolution and where we ought to take it, where it ought to take us as the people of this America. You're off.
Well, we're terribly concerned because public policy for the media, which historically had to be fought out in print, fought out on the platform, fought out on the waterways, and all the other communications ought to have lagged so far behind in the electronic media because people didn't know what they were dealing with. And the concept that when broadcasting came along, that there were channel shortages, and it justified the broadcaster controlling everything he carried, and justified him in turning down people who wanted to come in with their own material, their own ideas, or even their own entertainment.
You're talking about the over-the-air broadcast.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
And cable became an extension of broadcasting. It was just a broadcasting system with new channels. And the same formula for entertainment and sports and news, supported entirely by advertising, which is print got away from. Books, entirely supported by public purchase, magazines, partially. So the ACLU felt that the their basic goal there is what you call, Jake, a passionate dedication to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And in today's terms, speech and expression isn't just words, it's pictures, it's code, it's computer language, it's graphics, it's software. And the only word that aptly fits the diversity of the speech and expression that is striving to get out to people and people are striving to get is content. So I'll use the word content as synonymous for the entirety. Well, the ACLU looked at what the electronic media were doing. It was the hardware and technical facility interest automatically taking control of the content, deciding who could speak on the medium, who could finance it.
That's not what our founding fathers intended.
It said the Congress shall not abridge freedoms of speech and of press and of assembly. But the moment they passed the first Radio Act of 1927 and said there's only a few channels and we'll allocate these permanently to these licensees and give them control of the content, that meant they'd abridged speech from the very beginning.
But Sidney, in the early days of radio, if I remember, they allocated, when they first organized First Radio, whatever it was before the FC, they allocated religious educational institutions assignments on the air.
And education.
And then they were told education. And they were told by the commercial broadcasters then, no, you don't have to do it. We'll do it. We'll use the time, and we'll give you access to the public, that sort of thing. And then in the early days there was more of that, but it's disappeared because the advertising, you don't see much public service announcements anymore, do you?
No, you do not. The problem, of course, is it comes back to economic determinism.
Right.
There was no steady flow of revenue. For example, there are over 900 municipal broadcasting stations licensed in the United States. There's only one left, WNYC in New York. The educational stations are very few and, of course, subsidized by the educational institutions, which is right. But the revenue that's required to do quality programming, to bring in expertise, to bring in eloquent speakers and use modern graphics and audio-visual material isn't money that legislators easily will appropriate, particularly when commercial broadcasters realize that every 1,000 viewers or listeners that are siphoned off into public radio or public television are viewers and listeners they can't sell to Procter & Gamble or the advertisers. So it is true, there were attempts to get diversity which did not work out for these basic economic reasons on the one hand. On the other hand, the deliberate shortage of channels. Nobody fought harder to keep the number of channels limited than the commercial broadcasters. They fought, bled, and died to keep new channels. FM radio took 10, 12 years.
In fact, the inventor committed suicide, didn't he? Armstrong. No?
Professor Armstrong.
Yeah, right. But, Sidney, let me ask you, U.S. is unique of going the advertising route. When Britain went off, they treated broadcasting as a cultural institution, not a commercial institution, right?
Well,
why did we take that turn in Britain and a lot of countries copied Britain in the model of treating as a cultural asset? Tell us what your reading of that is. Why, Sidney?
Reverse your time frame.
Yeah.
The United States was first.
Right, they were first.
And Western Europe had the opportunity to see what American commercial interests did with broadcasting and say, ho, do we want that?
Yeah.
And said, no, we can only do that by first public support of educational and cultural programming, and secondly, allocation of sufficient channels, permanent channels, so they would have it. And that's one of the reasons why probably the best television in the world is German television. England may be somewhat behind, Great Britain may be somewhat behind them. They've learned from our era's oversight in public policy, and God bless them, because our job now is to learn from their successes.
Well, Sidney, carry on with your,
Okay, that was good. He said that gave you a taste of him. What a lawn and such a, yeah.
He's smiling.
Yes,
he's smiling the whole time.
Yeah,
he's
right,
being very
right.
emphatic. He
Yeah.
wants you to get the point.
Yeah,
but
right.
he's not out for blood. He just try to spread a little light.
That's right. That's right.
Truly.
One of the Foster sons said he had an unusual capability to plan what he was going to say as he spoke.
Well, he could sure write well, I'll tell you. Yeah, and he obviously could speak
tell
well.
me about it, I know that.
Yeah.
But and I'm so glad that was just shown. It'd be the opportunity for me to tell you that this 30-minute tape was something I took up to Eric Stonier, who was in charge of establishing the website hosted by Communications.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept nagging him every day. I said, Eric, you've got to take this home and see this. You have to know about the man you're going to set this website.
Yeah, that's right.
And he kept forgetting it. And finally he took it home after I nagged him daily.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Mrs. Dean, I love this man. I love everything about him. And then with such great enthusiasm, he and his associates who worked under him to set this up worked so hard for many days, going through volumes of reams of paper that I brought in, so many of Sydney's files, with such enthusiasm and such real passion.
Yeah.
And I feel so fortunate that because IBM stole him away.
Mm-hmm.
He was so good at what he did. But every one of those young men who were associated with did it with such enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them said, I would hope to attain just 1/10 of the passion commitment. That's the word. Thank you. That Mr. Dean had.
And I would say perhaps charisma.
Mm-hmm.
He had charisma. He was a real leader of men, justifiably by the dint of his intellectual and personality and so forth. And again, to underscore, he was in a very real sense, along about 1970, when things were working out, and you said that he had work to do in New York, and so much of what was going on in New York, and that was along about the time that the franchising agreements with the cable companies that were just coming online with a multi-channel capacity and all of the new telecommunications were beginning to open up. And he sensed and saw the significance of that, and always, to his great credit, where a lot of people are only interested in the stars or the cherry-picking, the money-making stars of the professional television production world and that sort of thing, he always stressed the importance of public access, that there has to be communication to the wide public, which was something, and set up this public access realm of communication, which is in a very real sense very unique in terms of the history of communications in our country. And he was the leading voice for developing that. So we're particularly in his debt here at Manhattan Network and the public access facilities around the country, cable facilities, and of course the linking of that to the internet, which is emerging now as such a democratic and liberating force, right?
He wanted this cable television to be treated like a public utility, like a television.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he wanted
to follow the guidelines, not to be controlled by the owners, like Irving Kahn, for example, whom he debated with often.
Do we ever get that on tape? Do we get Irving?
No, we
Irving
don't.
Kahn?
But I did often in Sydney.
Okay.
And I have a very
You've got some things here to show, right?
Sydney had written in 1973 this guidelines for planning a cable television franchise.
We're in the middle of franchising now. We might
know
take
that.
the heat of what he had to say. Yeah.
Exactly. In 1973, he published it himself, and he charged $2 for the cover of the stamps and the mailing. And the first person to bring this with me.
Okay, well, let me hold this up then.
Yes, because the very
Okay, here we go. I'm going to hang this up. This is a thing you can come in on on camera one, I guess, with this. And this was a thing he put up about how to do a cable franchise.
No, this is it. This is
what had been done by Sydney, right?
But
And
the
then
very first check
the first check that came for this this thing was from
came from Teleprompter.
Teleprompter. That was Mr.
Was
Irving
founded by
Kahn
Mr.
himself.
Irving Kahn himself, his adversary in all of these debates. And this was his very first check, so I framed it because I thought that was so
Very well done,
exciting,
Eugenia.
yes,
Very,
and,
very well done. I've got a program with Irving Kahn. This was in '73. I think it would have been a little bit after that. I did a program. He was talking about fiber optics and so forth. Yeah.
They had a great deal of respect for each other, although they were phone cars.
What else have you got here? Maybe we can show something here. Oh, shall we show this? Oh, here's some pictures. Can we show? Or what do you got to sort of
want to show. I really want to focus
on Sydney.
I want to focus on his website.
Okay.
A wonderful website.
Yep.
With 60 pieces of his writing, his works. There are many more that I wish were on it, and they did a wonderful job. And it can be easily accessible, be Googled, because I know the website address is 30 letters, and people don't want to bother writing that down.
Well, we're putting it up
I'd
at
like
the end. It's accessible. We'll put it up at the end
May
of the
I
program.
hold this up?
By all means. What is
If you
this
don't
we got?
mind.
No, hold it here so they
Because
can see it.
Because if that is Googled exactly the
Okay.
way it's visualized.
Now, this is a suggestion by Eugenia Dean, who has an interest in you becoming aware of this fellow Sidney Dean. She seems to have some affection for. You can get it by going to Sidney W. Dean Jr. into Google, and it will go right away to the website.
Columbia website.
To the Columbia website. And let's see, show it again. That's it, so you can write it down. That's one way. We have the actual URL at the end of the program.
I know, but that's 30 letters.
Yeah, I know. That's a little more complicated and so forth. And as I said to you, I still think that I got to talk to Ellie, or you should, or somebody, because I think that site could be expanded upon, because you've got file folders full of very relevant data that was under the imprimatur of Mr. Sidney Dean, and he's somebody to listen to, and I think there's a good deal of that that could be added to a very rich website. It's a very rich website for anyone interested in public access or for the roots.
First Amendment
First Amendment, and also public access television, which is a unique thing. It should be better understood, because I think the most important issues of the day are going to emerge first in this democratic, if we're talking about new ideas rather than the inherited institutional structures and assumptions, it will probably emerge out of the people, and it will emerge in public access first with important answers, it seems to me. And he was the father of that in a very real sense. There were others. George Stoney is on our board.
Oh, they were
George Stoney
friends.
was a friend of yours, right?
They were close friends with Sidney.
Yeah, he was at NYU.
Yes.
And did you ever know
He's
Everett
remarkable
Parker?
man.
Everett Parker was no?
I don't know.
But in terms of institutionally linking not only with the players within the cable industry and reading the implications, also with the town fathers and with the political elements that exist within
Very
the
much
society,
so.
how can we set up a context where you can have a relationship with these new communications developments and the people? And Sidney Dean was the pioneer in that. I think it's all right to have a bronze statue right as you come in the door here, because it would be good for us to pay attention to that, all of us. Yeah.
Well,
Peter, what do you
take
think?
over. You have
I'm all for it.
You're
yes.
all for it?
Yeah. I don't care.
Want to become part of the executive committee to get the statue of Sidney Dean?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Peter has a lot
good.
to
It's
say
thoroughly
about
worthwhile.
Yeah.
Will you take over, Peter?
But you knew him very well, right? You were good friends from a long time back, right?
Yes. I met him when I worked in the mailroom at McCann Erickson.
He was the media chief.
He was the marketing head, and McCann had just passed into this new phase in advertising where marketing was king.
Yeah, okay.
Copy, research, media, all those things were really subordinated to what they call the overall marketing concept, and that was Sid.
Yeah, all
with
right.
this encyclopedic mind and this. In presenting things or discussing things, you'll notice, because you would have seen it on the film, he never backtracked or said
No.
searched for words. It just poured out like that. It was organized.
His mouth and out came words of wisdom.
Yeah, exactly,
right,
exactly.
yeah.
Anyway, there were two trainee tracks in McCann. I was too old to be a trainee at all. I had to make a joke about not indulging in age discrimination, refusing to hire me for the mailroom.
Yeah.
And so they had a quite good idea that the mailroom delivering boys and girls, because all boys, I think, had to study things, and they would get lectures by department heads.
I see.
And quite often the lecturer would forget to come, or he'd show up late,
right.
you know, and nobody, and none of them ever prepared anything. They just came to let the students bask in their glory. Well, they said a few things.
Sounds a little bit like corporate America.
Yeah, absolutely. But Sid was incisive, challenging. He got people talking about things, and I was making notes as fast as I could.
Right.
And so I typed all this up on a stencil, you know.
Good for you.
Which
you do a mimeograph?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, mimeograph.
Absolutely.
I remember. Yeah.
And I ran it off as what they called a contact report, because that I felt we ought to always keep notes in these things and deliver them to the guy who made the talk. And so of course I ran it off. I came in early, stayed up late to do it, came in early, and distributed the printed forms to everybody. Being in the mailroom, that was easy. And at about 9:30, I got a call from Mr. Dean's secretary saying he'd like to see you right now. And I thought, oh God,
here it comes. What have I done now?
What's this? I guess because I'd used mechanics and stationery, their regular report form.
Good for you.
Yes.
Good for you. Taking initiative.
Well, it was fun.
Right.
And that was a meeting, I want to tell you. He said, where did you get all this stuff? He said, this is good. You really got some points here. And so we sort of chatted like that, and he said, well, I don't know, I'm busy this evening, but why don't you stop by and we'll have a drink downstairs tomorrow? So that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. We never did anything together in advertising. We were such different levels, you know. And
what part of town were you in then? Where did you have that drink? Do you remember the saloon you had that drink in, or the watering hole?
It was.
That would be memorable. We should go get that made a national.
Yes, we should.
We should make that a national hallmark.
Yeah,
what do they call it? National.
That's the place to put the statue. Yes.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, but it might be here. But you don't remember what part of town you were in there? Maybe
yes, it was in. It was, I think, on 3rd Avenue.
Right. It's a long avenue.
It's.
Think.
Well, wait a minute. Then we ended up in 50 Rock.
50 Rock.
Yeah.
Rainbow Room.
No. I think at that point we were in 50 Rockefeller.
This is the very night. Right, this is the very night when you went and had that drink, right? That'd be like a scene out of Network.
There's this pub on the ground floor.
You know, like a scene out of Network. You know the film Network, where they got to get...
No.
No, it's another movie. I'm thinking, my mind thinks cinemagraphically. I'm trying to see the setting.
Yeah.
Who's going to play you? Or you could play you. But,
anyway, Sid loved the sea.
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
Did he? Yeah.
Yes. He loved the natural sea, the phenomenon. He was never so happy he was in the water.
Yeah. Did he do scuba diving? Did he do scuba at all?
He was like a seal.
Yes.
He was wedded to the sea.
Oh, really? Huh?
And he loved sea history because the sea is about connections. Different cultures encountering each other.
I understand you know a thing or two about that as well yourself.
Yeah, so...
having been the head of the Sea History magazine.
Yeah, the National Maritime Historical Society and Sea History magazine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, we... believe me...
You know a thing or two, too, and you could have met on that intellectual plane with him then.
Yeah, well, I guess so, yeah.
And it was also part of a general interest. He had an interest in life.
Oh, yes.
And when you said Eugene, I couldn't quite get it. Did you say he was like your Zorba? Or
yes,
was he
Zorba.
like your Zorro?
No, Zorba.
Zorba, not Zorro.
Zorba.
Oh, Zorba. I could see maybe we could combine the both. We're trying to get the character
reference.
Yeah.
Zorba.
When I first met him, friends of mine asked me, who this man was, that I was...
Oh, you thought like Zorba, not Zorro.
I said an intellectual Zorba, because he was a true intellectual, but he was a Zorba, and this is the thing. If he wasn't also a Zorba, I think I wouldn't have fallen in love with him.
Was he like swashbuckling, like Zorro? You know, with the Z?
No.
He was more retiring,
no, it was
right?
only Zorba.
But he was on his tombstone. I forgot to bring it. I'm sorry.
I don't want to show it.
Okay, you don't want to, but he was buried, and it's the top of the line is gentleman. He was a real gentleman.
He was a true gentleman. He used to say, kind of politely, he said, I want to have in my tombstone, here lies Sidney Dean. He used himself well.
That's good. Did you? Yeah, that's
yes,
good.
Yes.
And he did.
Yes, he did.
And he filled the room when he came into it, did he?
Oh,
with his
yes.
colleagues and that sort of thing.
Yes, he did.
It was always First Amendment, Nadine Strawson, the Civil Liberties Union, First Amendment, and public access and democratization of communication in a multimedia. He was a real pace setter. Pardon?
From 1955. He was...
And a lot of that came to fruition along about 1970 when the cable companies were coming on finally and looking for the franchising. And he said there has to be some public return from the cable companies. Was it Lord Beaverbrook who said about newspapers? He said a newspaper is a license to print money.
Yes.
So you're going to realize a good deal of income from this enterprise, and everyone could see that a cable franchise in the largest market in the world is going to realize is going to be a license to print money. And I've noticed as public record that Time Warner is doing very, very well. And they could have just taken all of that retained earnings and did it for their own self and got another yacht or something. But the city fathers had to be enlisted, the political element, and he was a major figure in the city club. So he influenced the whole feeling within New York that there should be some public service payback through the political process so that there could be something come to the people of the city rather than just the professionals within the business, which is a model a lot of people, professionals within the business, would like to follow. But he built that context just as that new expanding abundant capability was coming, so he set up a template for a unique system of communication which we're utilizing here as we sit and record this program now, no?
Yes.
So his statue should be outside this door.
Yes, right.
As well as at that saloon.
Yes.
But we could have
There were in 1965 there were two franchisees in Lower Manhattan.
Sterling?
Who had been well, one was
teleprompter.
Yeah, teleprompter. Yeah. The other one was anyway. This had been negotiated with Mayor Wagner or whoever it was, and practically in secret. And Sid was very indignant about it. So these were coming up for renewal, I think, in 1970, and that's when the proverbial stuff hit the fan. And Sid made sure that it really hit it.
And he kept saying many public access channels, many, expand to the people.
Absolutely.
And that was he was so ahead of his time because most people really don't think there's any reason to pay any attention to what the people have to say. They will just try and find the star who's going to, that they're going to be able to build a marketing around and so forth. And yet he had all this experience in the marketing world, so he knew of what he spoke, and he also had a wide interest and was able to incorporate his thinking in a very wide context and a historically well-based and future-looking context, which was the mark of people that we should really pay attention to through the ages, I think, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the broad humanistic background of Sidney's was a priceless asset to everybody you knew, and he's like a university in himself.
He was an important member of the City Club. Maybe you could share with us that, or Eugenia, did you have to deal with them? The City Club was an important, and is, I guess, still, but it was particularly important in terms of a civic responsibility.
It was much more important in the 1960s than recently, and I think there are some reasons for that. But in Sid's day, he and his great friend I.D. Robbins put it in the forefront of everything that was happening.
And he was always talking communications.
Yes.
Communications, electronic communications. He was stressing that just as it was emerging. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he was always on that page.
And he was called in as advisor by lots of people, and it was amazing the number of people he consulted with just from a sense of duty. The Wharton School, God knows, all these different organizations, Annenberg Center, all that. And in one case, Eugenia has told me this, that some bunch of people were getting together to do something with the public and the media barons involved, and they decided to hold a private meeting, and they called Sid in to consult with him. He said, I'm not going to attend any private meetings.
He was really, that's called transparency and responsibility.
It has to be done in the open.
Yeah.
It's got to be public.
He had all the right instincts.
You couldn't have a clearer case.
Yeah. He never thought to run for office or anything of that sort of thing?
No.
No, didn't. Okay. His thing was communication. And he understood it, having been, wasn't he also Interpublic?
Well, that is what I can't understand became.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I see. That's what it was. Yeah, it was the largest advertising.
Walter Thompson, and then.
Yeah, and the largest advertising agency in the world. So he knew of what he spoke.
Oh boy.
And
he knew what those rascals were up to.
Yeah, he knew what the rascals were up to in that hen house.
Yeah.
And so he was guarding against it in the public interest.
Absolutely.
A very important citizen's role he played, yeah. Yes, Eugenia.
Well, I was just in his obituary that I will never go into a backroom discussion, he told the city club trustee. And, but he died. What do you think, Reader? I would like very much to be Senator Patrick.
By all means, he passed. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and he passed in 1992. Did you say?
1997.
1997. I'm sorry. He was 92 or 91 years old, and among his friends, he had many city and also in the state and the national arena as well, and he was respected universally. Yeah. I don't think he had any real serious enemies. Irving Kahn was the first, even though they had argued, but he had great respect. So it's the mark of a real gentleman and a leader, in a very real sense of the word.
Ed Koch, Pat Moynihan.
Pat Moynihan, and he honored him.
And Pat Moynihan, the senator, had honored him and sent you a notice. Did he send? Is this the notice that he gave you?
Yes, it was a congressional record. Patty Moynihan wrote me a letter
after Sidney had passed.
Yes.
Well, by all means, read it. Read it out.
Well, I didn't want to read it all, but it's a tribute to the congressional record, the 105th Congress. It's a Senate tribute to Sidney W. Dean. Okay. And just maybe 2 things that he said, just I clipped out. He said, Mr. President, Sidney W. Dean was a man devoted at once to the public and to the private. Before he passed away last month, he had worked for 41 years toward the cause of good government in New York, while at the same time becoming one of the city's strongest advocates of free speech and the right to privacy. And then he was an advocate of using the emerging technology of cable television as a way for those who are poor and ignored to be seen and heard.
Thank you. That's most of the people throughout most of history.
He said long before most others, he saw the potential power of television, pressing the city to require cable companies to provide public access channels.
Thank you very much. And he stressed, you were there, he was stressing that very strongly when a lot of people would just say in their mind, or others, or people that are in the hit, we used to have a hit parade for music, they're looking for stars, and he would be in the voice of the people. He was a true Democrat in the terms of saying, have many access channels, he would say. He was stressing that. So we can't underscore it enough here, that he was truly probably the most important founding father we had. I don't know. We're going to do more research, find out some of the people he was associated with, and get the roots for this public access realm well down.
Good.
Yeah.
May I, would I have
anything you want, Eugenia, is yours.
Because Peter was here. Sidney really planned his 90th birthday. He really wanted great birthday party at which was held on out in Westchester in some large backyard. And he wanted a Scottish bagpiper.
Yes,
and he wanted a bouzouki player.
A bouzouki player.
Yes, we could dance a
Bouzouki
belly
is
dance.
that's like that's Greek.
That's Greek. That's right.
I think you have something to do with that.
Well, I have.
You have a little Greek background there.
I have on both sides.
Not bad, not bad. And he was Scot, I
Sidney
guess, in
embraced,
England.
even during our 1-hour wedding ceremony, he said how beautiful this is. All during the ceremony, he had a passion for everything. But what I really wanted to be, if I have all time.
Yes, we've only got about a couple minutes left. Yeah.
His credo on his 90th birthday, which he never had a chance to deliver. He was busy belly dancing.
Was he in a kilt?
He said.
Was he saying this in a kilt?
This is important. No.
No, but costume.
Yes, no,
he was in a
wearing
kilt.
his Scottish trews.
Oh, okay.
He said, after 90 years of fumbling, purpose of life, use, develop, and strengthen each and all of your facilities. Deny only the ones which do harm to others. Must discipline or partially / wholly deny them when they are against your moral principles.
Yeah.
And then the moral principles: liberty, social justice, compassion.
Words to live by. Words to live by. Yeah.
That's why I really wanted to read this. He never had a chance to do this. He was too busy. He was belly dancing.
He was having too good a time.
He never got a chance to read it. Well,
He was a wonderful belly dancer.
Was he good at belly dancing?
Well,
was
Peter
he
was
really
there.
good?
Oh, boy.
Was he good?
Oh, yes.
And Scottish, yeah, Scottish.
Scottish trews. He wore
You really
Scottish
could
trews.
shake a leg, huh?
He had a one-side hip swivel.
Well, he's a wonderful person, and I'm really glad to have brought in two people who were so close to him, particularly Eugenia, if I may. Peter, it's really good talking to you, and it's a tribute to a man of great significance, particularly for us here in public access, because has particularly significance to us, but also has a gigantically important scene in terms of the evolving of our whole civic society. He was very important, and I think he should be celebrated widely, and I think you might agree with that.
Yes, I think. And again, I do hope that everybody will.
We'd all be the better for it.
We'd all
the
be
more
the better for
we
it.
celebrate it, yeah.
To log on to the video.
Yes, to log on to the video
Wonderful
and to the website.
Much to the website.
Be involved with the
That's what I
website,
meant.
and I
I'm so
think
sorry.
that can be brought up, and then this program will be added to it. And I think you're going to be besieged with other people who are going to want to talk about this man, because I think there's going to be a great deal of interest among those who followed in his path, in order to give him, to help fulfill the vision that he had, because it's becoming into real significance now. We're in debt to him, and in debt to you for having helped him so mightily in his good work.
Well, the website is entitled The Virtual Archive of the Writings and Visions of Sidney W. Dean, Jr. His work protected the freedom of access to the formation essential to democracy.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for viewing. Your pleasure to have had those perceptions. I'll remind you once again, a dear friend of his for long term, from the mailroom to the saloon on the corner to great works. That's being Peter Stanford, and immediately left his wife and a comrade for so long in his good life, helped him along a great deal, and is doing so now that he's passed. And that's Eugenia Dean. Happy to bring you to those perceptions. Tune in again next week. We'll be coming back. Thank you really very much for coming into the program.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Well, that was a treat. Well,
we got a few thoughts down and everything, and now it's gone to black.
I didn't give you much of a chance, Peter.
Oh, no, he got some good words in. The words were very choice that he put in. He's a very wise man. You should,
I know that.
You should try and cultivate his friendship, if you can possibly try, because he's a very wise and good man.
Hard work.
I know you don't hardly know the guy, but you should try. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. I think we're that's a wrap, as they say. So.
You know what Sidney said about